So I released a video earlier today that was about the Rings of Power's depiction of Numenor based on the Minoan civilization, a whole mess. And I mentioned how I was going to make another video talking about my issues with some of the representation. This is that video. Especially with this shot here, there's a lot to talk about. This is a very tough thing to balance, and this is actually a second recording of this. There's a lot of disingenuous, toxic nonsense for and against a lot of the representation in Rings of Power and all that. The discussion is an absolute mess. I want to make it excruciatingly clear where I'm coming from with these criticisms, what I think is an issue and what isn't an issue. Two things I want to make clear right out of the gate. One, I am all for representation. Anyone who's read my fantasy stories, Godshards, I have a shit ton of representation in there. The Uniter, for example, the main character is a deaf female lesbian whose love interest is a woman of color. I am a major proponent of representation in fantasy. I know several fantasy authors who are making stuff based on African, Egyptian, you know what I mean? Like, I am a major proponent of these things. So please don't misconstrue my criticisms of representation in Rings of Power as closet bigotry or like saying stuff in bad faith. Neurotic, I am not. Like I kind of alluded to in the other video, despite my issues with the representation in Rings of Power, it is ultimately not the main cause of the show's problems. It's a symptom of it, it's a contributing factor of it, but it is not the main reason why the show is bad. You can change the ethnicities of these characters, like you can make Arondir white, and the issues would still be there. To frame the entire show as only bad because of the quote-unquote wokeness is disingenuous. That being said, let's talk about some issues I had with the representation of Numenor. Again, we're only talking about Numenor. I would give a little bit more credit to how Numenor handled its ethnicities if it was consistent. This is why I can't give this show the benefit of the doubt. The decisions the show makes regarding representation are pretty much without any thought at all. This right here is what frustrated me so much. It stuck out as a sore thumb when I was watching this show for the first time, and it's still stupid now. Where on Middle-earth is this guy from? I'm not being facetious. Where is this guy from? Because here's some things about the Numenorians, okay? The Numenorian civilization was expressly insulated from other men. There was no interbreeding, and the Numenorians had traits about them because they were kind of like a mix of men and elves. They lived longer. They had certain eyes, certain hair color. Numenor should not be diverse. They would be homogeneous, kind of like Japan. You know what I mean? We're talking about a people that's going to 99.99% be of a certain ethnicity. This is what frustrates me as well, because if they just went for the Mediterranean look and just fully committed to that, it would still be law and accurate, but at least it would be consistent. But because of this Asian guy, that goes out the window. They're not thinking this through at all. Even more than some of the other whitewashing and blackwashing we see with the Numenorians. Like, this guy isn't that much better. There's no Asian countries or Asian-esque cultures in Tolkien's Legendarium that are outright confirmed. And the only ones that might be candidates, in this case, canned, and possibly the Easterlings, are on the other side of the world. And you know what they were also? Pro-Sauron. But the thing is, there's totally room, by the way, to flesh out those peoples, which is why we've never seen them yet. Seriously, there's your opportunity to add more representation, but that would involve actually filling the gaps in Tolkien's Legendarium, which is part of what they were trying to do. People often call this fanfiction, and yeah, kinda. If they really want to make this more inclusive, if they want to expand Tolkien's Legendarium and fill the gaps the Great Worldmaker never did, they would be doing stuff like that instead of this. Even if this guy was canonically from Cand, it still makes no sense that he's here. Because again, Numenor was homogeneous. I'm sure the reason is inexplicably, they just had a bunch of, I guess, Numenorian households that just bunch of completely different ethnicities just cause you, like, literally don't question it. You gotta think this through. Again, if they had just stuck to the Mediterranean vibe, I mean, I do find it funny how Rings of Power has better Mediterranean Greeks than Netflix does, since Netflix managed to both whitewash and blackwash Mediterranean representation at the same damn time. Seriously, don't even get me started on those two things. What's going on with the shows is a damn shame. So yeah, just wanted to finish that follow-up. Next time we talk about stuff with Lord of the Rings, I'm probably going to talk about Numenor and Gondor as we see in the Jackson films. There are some liberties those films took too, and I feel like that needs to be recognized as well. But yeah, I'll see you guys then.